Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hello, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1111th New Social Environment. I'm Magali, a programs associate here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Leopoldo Goût and Andrew Woolbright. And now I'll introduce today's guests and hosts. Leopoldo Goût is a visual artist, writer, and filmmaker who works across mediums to capture the ephemeral, an abstract and figurative clash with memory and humanity with chaos. Born in Mexico City, he embarked on numerous artistic pursuits: painting, drawing, sculpture, filmmaking, digital art, soundscapes, performance, and more. His work has appeared in galleries and museums throughout the world, including the West Collection of Pennsylvania, the Museo de Arte Contemporáneo in Mexico City, Galeria Museo of Bogota, Colombia, and more. And our host today, artist, curator, and critic Andrew Woolbright, is based in Brooklyn, New York, and is an MFA graduate from RISD in painting. Woolbright is the founder and director of the Gallery Below Grand, located on the Lower East Side in New York. In addition to curating, he's an editor-at-large at the Brooklyn Rail. He currently teaches at the School of Visual Arts and Pratt Institute. And with that, I will hand it over to Andrew to get us started.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to get into this conversation with Leopoldo. I've gotten to know Leopoldo over the last, I don't know, 6, 7 months now. Got to do some studio visits and see this show as it's being worked on. And I'm really excited to get into it, just how much went into this exhibition. It's years worth of work, incredible collaborations with lots of people were involved. And it really is like the show that kind of culminates a very exciting and interesting life that tries to do so in a very sensorial way. This show to me felt close, or we can talk about it, but gets into like an idea of a Gaston Couste's work or a very operatic idea of art, which is trying to employ sound, video, sculpture, very tactile works, and painting and drawing all in one. So, Leopoldo, thanks so much for joining us. And can you tell us about your entry point into art? Because I feel like for this show, we almost have to start at the beginning of everything. Like, as you were born, your childhood, like where did all this kind of untangling come from with these forms that you're dealing with?
Thank you, Andrew. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you, the Rail. You guys are great, and a shout out to Bruce Pearson. Thanks to him, a wonderful artist of Brooklyn who kind of helped me connect with the Rail, and I saw him around, so I'm super excited of being here. I mean, I started very early on, like since I have memory of being an artist, but I remember I was telling you this before, and when our phones crashed, but I remember when I was like, I don't know, 5 years old, my father used to do studios for artists. He's an architect, and his friends were all artists of the kind of abstract 60s world of Mexico and 70s. And one of them was my brother's godfather, Manuel Fergueres, who has right now a mini retrospective in Basel in London. And and I remember going to his studio, and I was immediately hooked. I still vividly remember the sense of oil. He was a very disciplined kind of like abstract painter, but extraordinary. And I remember just feeling, holy carambas, this I want to be home. I want to be here. I want to do this. This sounds like a good idea. And I've never stopped. Like I really, art has been integral in all my different things that I do. And I have explored many mediums, in art and in film and in other things, but they're all kind of in my head, very interconnected. But really, like going to those studios of artists in Mexico City was really like a vivid memory I still use and access to, and kind of connects me to this incredible process.
That's amazing. I mean, yeah, I think this is starting to open up where we'll get to in our conversation. But it's important to know this about Leopoldo for all of you getting to meet him today. But the work really is an incredible synthesis: a synthesis of cultures, a synthesis of mediums, a synthesis of disciplines. Like I remember when Fong first told me about your studio, he just said this is an artist who he's got music that he's working on, video, giant paintings, drawings, sculpture. He just is a maker, and I really appreciate that about you. And I'm wondering, like, these points of synthesis within your practice, and maybe we've talked about this before, but can we talk a little bit about going to St. Martin's and when you really started to kind of merge your childhood and your past with kind of art, different various points of art history.
Yeah, of course. I think I got the lottery because St. Martin's was there was a scholarship with the Mexican Council and the British Museum and the British Council and the Mexican Cultural estate that allowed some students to go to England and study not just in St. Martin's but in various other schools, and I feel I found the I got a lottery ticket. I won that. I was able to have my formative years there. First in Chelsea School of Art for 1 year, kind of like they call it foundation course, which I wish more artists would take it because it's like a crazy hodgepodge of trying different things, and it gives you some time to really experiment on lots of things. And then St. Martin's, I focused on sculpture, but it was in England that I kind of like really took the dive on doing arts, and it was, I was in a weird time in England. It was like the aftermath of the young British movement, so there was a lot of conceptualism, and I kind of I'm always reacting in opposites, so I started to go back to drawings and painting, and I kind of was reacted to the heavy conceptualism of the 90s in England, and but I really had the opportunity to touch a lot of different schools of thought and practices, and it was there that I started to experiment on everything that I could get my hands to. I remember seeing a documentary on Louise Bourgeois, and really connecting to her way of thinking, her way of making images the same form, and exploring all sorts of materials, and that materiality from her really like inspired me. And obviously there's a lot of artists from all over the centuries that I experienced in the big museums in England, and that also kind of informed me of the freedom of being part of this crazy human experience that is making art, and it's kind of a privilege, and I feel that it's a continuum. It's not a, very early on I was very much against the schools of progression, like the 19th century theory that art has been progressing, and I feel like art has been a oscillation of energy, and kind of like a radio wave that you synchronize, and my favorite artists are artists that can explore with different mediums. So I also remember very clearly seeing a Lucas Amara show, and kind of blew my mind. So it was a mixture of artists like that, but also, the history of art that was in all of those big museums of England.
Yeah, I mean, that really comes through in the work still to this day. Like, I was thinking about your work just in relationship to, obviously these works are very present and timely for the moment, but like the way you contextualize it as a reaction against the Waibas, they're really not reacting to now as much as trying to make or it seems like they're trying to make more of a connection to, cave painting and the entire history of making, like a longer, like, or dreams, like Louise Bourgeois or Kiki Smith or Nikki de Saint Paul. Like, it's like you're more interested in connecting this like grand history of people that make things rather than focusing on like the conceptual present the way they did. Is that fair to say?
I think both are informed. I think it's I do get excited for the making of things, the tactile physicality of making beautiful things, and definitely that's something that is very relevant to whatever I do. But each one piece is kind of a journey. I mean, like the all of the different things that I do are I always say I'm not somebody that is searching to make things. I'm reacting to things. So for the, for example, in the tapestries that right now they're throwing in the screens, it was a journey, a really great journey. In the last few years, my family lost all our elders, and I had this feeling that I wanted to go back to where my dad used to take my family to in Oaxaca. We went to Chiapas and Oaxaca when we were kids, and I wanted to go back and kind of find a way to develop some things there. And a friend of mine called Georgina Saldaña introduced me to a bunch of different makers in Teotitlán del Valle, which is a town that is really focused on tapestries. And it was a process of a year of talking and meeting and working with these people, and until I found Antonio Ruiz, who's a master. He's really young actually, but he's a master, a 4th-generation tapestry maker, and we started collaborating, and it was a very kind of powerful reaction of my work and his work, and we spent hours talking and trying different things until we kind of found a path to really collaborate and create these things together. And then he brought in his entire family. So it was a process of me reacting to the different things that I ached for, reconnecting and to go back to a place of of comfort where at the same time that the elders are going away, you kind of look back into it, and that was the beginning of the process. But it's always been like, in all the different things that I'm making, is a reaction to adventures or journeys that I take, and they all have a story.
Can we talk a little bit more about that story because I mean, again, like I feel like there's this show really is the kind of the culmination of the whole life of making, and like really searching through your own biography, but also the history of art. And I'm wondering like how it relates to like when you first came to New York after St. Martin's. You showed with Tricia Collins Gallery, an amazing gallery. I think were you introduced by Kenny Schachter, or you had some relationship there? Like, what was that show like, and what was your early work like? Was it more sculptural based, or were you focused on your drawings like you are today, or was it similar to this show?
Well, actually, that show with Kenny, I was doing a bunch of shows. We did even a show in Mexico, kind of like a New York artist and Mexico City artist, but that was different. Tricia Collins was introduced to me because I had a few collaborations with New York based. She used to be in New York, Devon Dikeou, who had Zing magazine. I don't know if anybody of you remember. And she introduced me to Tricia Collins, and then we did this show, and it was amazing. It was drawings and photographs and a little video that I did with my brother, and it was kind of like a really great, beautiful show, beautiful gallery. She did the first Vic Muniz show, and she showed with a bunch of people that I really admired. So it was an amazing experience for me. But at that time it was I was starting to experiment with film with my brother, and we were doing all sorts of little trips in Mexico and experimenting with actors and people of all genders and mediums. And it was pretty much diving into the New York art scene at the time. But it was that was after after I did my studies in London, and I had a lot of energy and a lot of things to say as a Mexican artist, kind of living with suitcase all over the place. And I think that hasn't changed. I think that there is a connection between all the things that I've ever done, and as you were asking me, they all have these stories, and the stories really, you're right. I mean, I have this beautiful connection with my memory. I have almost like a photographic scent memory where I use it for my work. I channel, as I said before, this my first encounter to a studio, smelling the oils, and I still remember through the scent memory. I have these like real intense films of in my head of my childhood that I use and I mind, and I ache and crave to appear in the work. And as you all know, like dreams and memories are a little fuzzy, and they come into focus and they go off focus, and it's kind of that liminal space that I really ache to manifest in the work. And I think that you when you're doing those things, they're always coming to focus and fail as you're trying to get to that place or to get to that memory. It's almost impossible to capture it. So I think that a lot of my process is failing while I'm making them, and trying again and trying again, and it's a process that I've kind of refined.
Well, I know what you mean by failure. I know the artistic expression of failure, but as an audience, it's a really incredible experience. The failure produces such a complete idea, and I think, can we go back one slide, Magli? Because I think that this is a good, like, going off of this like very like almost synesthetic experience that you have to relating your history to specifically sound and smell. The beginning, correct me if I'm wrong, but the beginning of this show really came from these recordings that you were making as you lost your parents or lost your last ancestors that you're making to yourself, and then starting with this like soundscape of this album that you collaborated with a musician on. And could you talk us through, I mean, like, what was it like working through, like, one, correct me if I'm wrong about any of that information, but also what was it like really trying to like have a conversation through time and through, whatever it is, through the veil, to the people that matter to you, and framing the show through that?
So this kind of came together in a very strange way. We were working with the tapestries in Teotitlán, in Oaxaca. I was working in the studio in New York, and also in a studio in Mexico City, where we were doing some bronzes. And this is all in preparation to the show at Pobo's Gallery, which, by the way, shout out to them, because they've been amazing. I can't stress enough how wonderful experience it has been to show with them. Like, they threw 7 events for me. It was very kind of old-fashioned, beautiful experience to me. But so I was working for the aim of doing this show, and as I was making the tapestries, I could hear the sounds of the loom, and I started to imagine kind of tones or sounds in my head. And way back, like maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, I went to a gallery, and they had this beautiful concert. And at the end of the concert, I told the gallerist, a friend of mine, I said, like, you should do an album in this gallery. It sounds incredible. And as I was pitching her, I was thinking, like, why don't I just do it myself? And that's the origin of kind of like really pitching an idea to a friend of mine, and then thinking, like, wait a second, I can do it. And and I love the tradition of making prints, and I thought, like, what if I could do a print that also has a musical experience. And all this time I was recording sounds in the 3 studios, and kind of mixing them. And I called a young composer friend of mine called Oriana Guidi. She's incredible. I have collaborated with her before once, and I loved working with her. She's a young Mexican. She was working in her studies in Paris, and I started to send her songs that I had in my head, and little recordings with my mom, and kind of almost like a soundtrack to the studio or to the studios. And she started to weave it together, and we collaborated like that. And I would hear songs in my head and sing them, and I'm terrible at singing, so that was totally destroyed, because famously, if I sing in the shower, the water refuses to fall down in protest to to what comes out of me. So I've always envied the musicians, and because in my head it sounds incredible. So thanks the goddess to Oriana that was enduring my tunes, and through her we started to weave together this album. And this album is called Telar Adentro, which is the loom inside, and it's really like a journey I imagined the journey that starts in New York and goes to Oaxaca. I always thought that my mom was kind of a witch, so I imagined her on a broomstick flying from New York to Oaxaca, kind of overseeing the production of all this work that we're doing. And I was listening to that story, and I'm very happy with it. It's really a journey that I loved making, and I hope some people can listen to it, and they'd like it as much as I liked, making it with her.
That's amazing. I mean, I want to pick up on that kind of envy of music, or that envy of sound, or that envy of singing, because I think that really comes through in the process of your making. But Magli, I was wondering, can we play the video just so we can get a sense? Because again, the sound of this record playing in the background is very important for the whole exhibition. It really is, like, again, like, I don't know if you welcome it, Leopoldo, but a kind of like operatic or Gesamtkunstwerk, that you're like listening to such a personal biographical soundscape while you're also experiencing all of this. But yeah, let's play this.
That's good, no?
It is.
We should stop it, because I don't want everybody to spend too much time there. Like, I think they will go
Yeah.
crazy. But we recorded the sounds of, like, insects. We record the loom. We record fire. Because we, in the tapestries, we, Antonio and his family, and we made the colors, all of the, including on the sculpture, the pigment is, they're all handmade natural dyes, and we were boiling. I felt like, I love kind of alchemy. It was, real alchemical, all of the processes of the show, and I love the tactility of making the colors, making the dyes, and I thought that it sounded so incredible. So we really used that for the music. So, well, most of the instruments are kind of built through the sounds of the production of the work. It was really great. It was a wonderful experience to be able to grab sounds almost like colors and build upon it to make this music with Oriana.
Yeah, that gives us a sense. And again, I was fortunate enough to get to experience some of this work while I was in the studio. But it is such a sensuous process. Everything, the fabrics, like everything has a sense of touch to it. Even the flat wall works. It's like that rhythm or that wave. I'd like to talk more about. But while we're on these tapestries of the elephant, can you talk about this very symbolic use of this, elephant that you've arrived at, that you keep making? It has your incredible sense of line. I love your line. I love the way you draw. But like, I was really interested in like how you talked about the elephant in the past, and I want to hear about how you've arrived at this like figure that you keep kind of repeating and repeating and repeating, trying to get something really going with it. Can you talk about where it came from or how you're thinking about it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, as I said before, I love to work with memory, and I was moving studios. I had a large studio. I've always been lucky by the way of New York studios. I've always, almost like New York wants me to work. And I had a very nice studio, and I was moving from one studio to the other, and a huge pot of paint fell in the floor and loosely in this shape, and it really took me to a memory I had forgotten. I was probably 5 or 6, I don't remember. My mom took me to a petting zoo, and she lifted me to drive what was a giant. To me, it was the largest elephant I've ever seen. I remember the smell of the poop of the elephant and my mom's perfume kind of mishmashed, and the power of my mom like putting me on this elephant and riding it, and then the skin of the elephant, the gray skin, and the hair has been so coarse and beautiful of the time. And I remember flying like with my mom, impulse of like carrying me and putting me on the elephant, and the kind of power that it felt, riding that beautiful animal. And that week, I think she showed me for the first time the Dumbo, the Disney movie, which is still very kind of racist film, but at the time I was I was a kid. I was always been an artist. I was always my brain has always worked in a very kind of different way, and I couldn't understand the difference between film and cartoons. It was the same thing to me. I didn't understand how that elephant could fly. The one I just rode, it was the same one that flew, and it was fascinating to me that something so heavy can defy the laws of gravity and fly. And I guess sculpture is has a lot to say about that. It's defining gravity or thinking about gravity, and that feeling was really etched in my head when I saw the accident of the paint in the floor, and it really made me want to do it again, to remember that moment with my mom. So it's not really an elephant, it's more of a feeling of that memory, kind of self-triggering to remember that, to go through that memory and dive in it. And really, now I remember her dress, the fabric of her dress, as she's pulling me up into the air to go on top of that elephant. And I some of these memories, you don't even know if they're real, if they're a mystery, if your brain is inventing them. But that's how we all are fragments of those memories, and we ache to go back to them, and they're very potent. They're almost like an injection of your own life, of the reasons of being here, or the reasons that you want to be a better artist, a better father, a better friend, and that those emotional kind of injections of very strange fleeing element. An elemental force is what I'm trying to build with this image, and I say failures because you can never get that perfectly. I mean, I've even studied that machine that the Japanese are building that can record the dreams of people, and it's still like, it looks like AI, it looks like computer. It doesn't really connect with the feelings that we have, in this world. That's why I personally don't feel challenged by AI or scared of it. I feel like it's so difficult to get to that liminal space and to touch the feelings that you can get with memory. And different artists use it in different ways, and I like it always. I mean, like, for example, I love how Dan Vo, the Vietnamese Mexican artist, works through his memory in a very conceptual way, and I'm very open to that. At the same time, I go through different ways to reach to similar travels in history and in memory, and we just go about it in different ways. But I love the attempt to see it, and I guess that in the case of this elephant, I saw it very clearly. It triggered a memory that I had that was totally dormant and away from me, and it gave me so much power that second, those few seconds when it came back to it. And that's the origin of this thing.
Well, I mean, I really love the way you exercise this form, like you return to it and really see what you can get out of it. At times it feels like a flower, at times it feels like a splat. At times I'm very aware of that skinny leg. That's the impossibility of form, like you said, that's like holding the whole thing up. And then sometimes it's like a coral reef or like the knot or burl in a tree or a tumor. It has this like very corporeal kind of feeling to it that I really find enchanting. And it's like, and I guess can we also can we skip ahead to the painting of the waves or like some of the wave works? Yes, because I think not just because of the sound playing in the exhibition, but there's also just throughout everything in your work that I've seen, there's this really strong sense of rhythm that like there's these like sound waves that are kind of pulsing at all times. And what I really value about your practice is everything, even when you talk about it, everything is like not trying to impose an idea on anything. It's like seeing the splat or seeing the splatter and then seeing a form and letting that kind of guide you, or saying like I should make a sound. But can you talk about this like reoccurring motif of the wave?
Yeah, I feel like it was just trying to, through repetition, get into the zone of the memory. So I love going into my memories as a, very very young, and I use this. It's almost therapeutic. Like, I kind of plug into a rhythm that helps me build the memories and or recreate them, going through them. And in this particular case, um I live in New York. It's an island. There's water all around us, and my walks to the studio get me close to the water. And I kind of like started to immediately do the pattern. The repetition gets me into that zone, and I travel through those memories. So I'll give you an example, because this really triggered I went when I was, I don't know, 5 or 6. I used to My dad would take us on Sundays to see my grandmother, which the food was the greatest beans that you'll ever have in your life. And I remember running from the car to the door. It was a black gate of metal, rusted, and I would put my eyes in the little holes of the rust, and all of this. I started to remember this moment of going to see my grandmother, uh, and the water that they would use in her little garden, which in my head was gigantic, but I'm sure it was tiny. And going into the garden, smelling the flowers, smelling the wet earth, and really diving into that memory atomically. Like, I have this wonderful experience making this, like, to the point where I remember one caterpillar, the little ones that look like they have skateboard, like roller blades, and they're tiny, and they're like they walk in on the leaves. It's just very addictive to me in my practice to go through that, through those memories in such an atomic way, to the point that I can remember even patterns on top of the flowers or on top of the leaves. And it's to me it's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary feeling to get to those hyper uh, atomic moments where you can smell a memory that was, many, many, many years ago, and really keep discovering elements in that memory. And this practice like helps me get there. It's almost like it's the engine to, as you said, to exercise those memories. It helps me exercise them. And I think that, when people say time is relative, it's really relative. And, I don't know if you guys have ever had an accident, but, I was with a friend of mine called Patricia, and we had a car crash, and I still remember every second of the time that went from putting the brakes to the impact, which was probably 2 seconds or 1 second. And I can talk for hours on that 1 second, on the metal, on how it was folding, on how the dashboard hit my head, like. And to me, it's very addictive to go into these zones of hyper memory, and these paintings are kind of like my recipe to get there.
Mm.
Other projects that I have is more a conceptual idea, but in these cases, on these two paintings, that, by the way, the show is highly curated by the wonderful Luca Colombi at the Gallery Povos and his incredible team. Because as you know, I have 3 studios. They're all filled to the rims of work, and I have no way of knowing what to show, what to throw away. I am blind by my own production. I really have too much work, and thank God that I found a great partner that can kind of help me curate the process. Because without that, I mean, I love artists that really know how they show and what they do, and I admire them and I envy them. I kind of envy that of you. Andrew, like you're a curator, so you know how to display, how to show your work. I have no clue. I'm heavily like confused by what I do, and I love the partnership that I have with Luca, that he was able to kind of curate a portion of the work and really make me focus on that focus. And I had that for a minute with Tricia, and with a couple of little things I did with Jack Tilton. And I really enjoy that. And not until now I was able to find that connective tissue with Luca and his team. But yeah, these waves are an engine, like a key to get to that zone. And I don't even know if I would have showed them if it was up to me to display the show.
Well, I mean, I think that, I mean, Leopoldo, like I curate and do things, but I still love, I mean, what you're describing is just like a classical gallerist or dealer. It's really great that Luca's provided that. But I remember talking to someone about, like Jasper Johns would just drop all of his work off at Castelli Gallery and come back the next day, and Castelli would hang everything where it needed to go and decide what went in and what didn't. And I think that exhibition planning is really helpful. It's great that you found that experience, because it's like we're all looking for that as artists.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's really a journey.
Sure.
Like I've also had shows where I have no clue what I'm doing, and it's terrible. But I just, as I've said this to you before, I love my failures. My life is full of failures. It's like 91, 99 1. This was very satisfying to make, and to give the controls, the kind of like, to let be curated. It's been amazing. And I shout out to all the curators out there listening to this video or podcast, however we do it. I love you guys. I feel it's it's a curator appreciation day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, also, I mean, something I've just realized in our conversation is like you are working through different disciplines and mediums, and maybe it's not like readily apparent to some people how it all fits in. Like, I think it feels like it all works together very well when you're in the room with it, or at least I had that feeling. But I think something that's very strong to that is it really is a memory palace. Like that, the consistent theme between all of it is that you're locating and you're trying to find a specific sensorial memory through the act of drawing, sculpture, painting, video, whatever it is. You're trying to work backwards to something that you want to hold on to. And like all of your work really kind of, is it fair to say a lot of your work functions as a memory palace?
Yeah, absolutely. This slide specifically, I'm really happy. I collaborated with a incredible digital artist that I'll murder. His name is Matt Burrage. I'm terrible at pronouncing, but he's a wonderful artist. And I published a little novel I wrote to my daughter. It was my COVID project, where I drew hundreds and hundreds of butterflies, because every time I took her to Mexico, to my daughter Ines, butterflies will land on her head. And I remember as a kid, again, with my parents with my mom this time, going to the Monarch Sanctuary. I don't know how old I was, probably 9 or 10. But it was, I've traveled all over the world, and very few places are as close to magic as this one. This is millions of butterflies that land in this two sanctuaries in Mexico, in Michoacan. There's millions and millions of butterflies that go from Canada all the way to Mexico. And And I'm not, I struggle with digital art. In this case, I really wanted to explore to see if I could do a digital piece that is very tactile. I feel it's successful. It's difficult to see it on the photograph, but if you go to this place, it's gigantic. It's one of the largest screens in the, in the country. And and the sounds that we built through recording butterflies, and then all of these butterflies are directly from the paintings I was doing with natural dyes for this book. And we kind of like figure out a way to digitize my drawings and animate them. And it really, I'm very happy with this piece because it really feels overwhelming. A little bit of that fairy dust that you feel when you're in Michoacan. I'm passionate about those forests. I'm trying to raise awareness and donate it a lot to the two sanctuaries. They're being challenged by the production of consumption of avocado in the States, and they're gorgeous. And because the Michoacan produces the best avocados in the world. So it's Narcos, you can't write this up. This is so funny that the Narcos have realized that pot is too cheap to sell. The profit margins for pot, because of the legalization of pot, has made them, some of them are cutting trees to make avocado plantations, and this has impacted these sanctuaries, which are supposed to be protected by UNESCO. And this piece was just so amazing to made. And like, can you do digital world tactile, and can you push the limits of what it means to do that? And I feel this is for all the failures I've had, this one I really feel it succeeded. And people reacted beautifully on the show. And it's a massive screen. It's gorgeous. I hope I can bring it to New York at some point if the right conditions are, because, like, again, it's a very large piece. So it has to feel authentic, authentically overwhelming, because other than that, it's better to just go to Michoacan and experience the real thing, obviously. So I was just reacting to the fact that I can't be there all the time, but I ache to be there with the memory. Especially right now, it's a little dangerous down there, but I ache to be there. You go to this forest where 1 million creatures are making out. They're literally having sex. It's a massive orgy of millions and millions of creatures basking in the sun and making love. And it's one of the most beautiful experiences of anybody's life. So, I failed to try to emulate that, but it's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that there.
It's incredible. I mean, I wanted something we haven't gotten to talk about, because I mean, it's a beautiful piece, but your use of color. Could we go to your drawing of the elk, or the stag? Sorry. Let's see. No, not. Yeah, that one. Because you in some cases you're using these really vivid, warm colors, reds and deep oranges for the butterflies, and then also the elephant, and then also your other color that you love working towards is this really agile, fast-moving, animated blue that you have. And this drawing you made entirely using ink pens. Can you talk about, like, maybe like, on one end you're dealing with like love, the expressions of love, the expressions of like this butterfly orgy, but on the other scale you're dealing with like these kind of like dark and kind of moody dreamscapes. Can you talk about one, why you used ink pens to make this, but also the imagery of this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is a kind of tragic, fun, tragic comedy. I a long time ago, I think in 2007, I had a very beautiful apartment with my studio there. I was painting. I was having a lot of work there, and we lost everything to a fire. And my studio kind of became Kinko's FedEx. For you young people that don't know, Kinko's FedEx used to be a photocopy place that you would go, and it was open 24/7. And I actually met a lot of the famous graffiti artists, because they would go at 2 a.m. It was open 24/7. They were doing their stencils there, and it was free ballpoint pens and paper, and I started to draw there, and I actually started my first novel there. And I just grabbed these ballpoint pens and started to work with them, and I felt that they were very genuinely free and beautiful, and I got obsessive. Again, this pattern with the ballpoint pens, if it's you can't see it too close, but it's I basically used every single ballpoint pen in the tri-state area. I don't think you can buy one right now in New York or Brooklyn, because I used them all in this one and a couple other paintings like that. And this repetition of the lines that I was doing kind of was my therapy of going back into my memories. And by the time that I started this painting, I was very comfortable with the ballpoint pen in terms of what I could do with it. And I decided, can I do a very beautiful painting, like a massive painting with just using this and maybe a little charcoal, or no, the charcoal came later. But in this case, my studio was at top of one of the World Trade Center towers. And so the line started like a building drawing. I was like, just going the verticals and the horizontals of New York was very kind of like I was echoing what I saw. And my friend Alejandro, who's a great inventor and chef and kind of larger than life Mexican, came to the studio, and this bird just looked at him and say like, "I hate you," and started to smash on the windows of this building. We were in a 78th floor, and the bird really wanted to rip Alejandro to death. And it was very, very he was like, he would then fly away, and you could see it go into the distance and then circle around and again ram himself onto the glass. He was crazy. Like, he wanted to murder my friend. I don't blame him, by the way. Like, Alejandro is a colorful character and he can annoy, and half of the people love him, half of the people annoy him. I think he's the genius. I love him to death, and he's an important friend of mine, but he can cause a stir of action, and this bird really wanted him. So I kind of like, I couldn't just let it go. The bird kind of appeared through that. In terms of the stag, it's a very fun story. This is a really great memory. I was doing the stag started, this is again, I think in much later, this is like 10 years ago. I did a little film with an actor, producer, filmmaker, great guy called Idris Elba. He and I met randomly in London, and through a friend of us, and we became friends. And he calls me and say, "Hey, Leo, I have this project I want to direct. I want to make this little film. The music is this band, and no one is taking care of me. No one is helping me." And I was like, "Why are you calling me?" He was represented by a massive management that they did, big movies and commercials and music videos. And it was like, I don't know, they're just not taking me seriously. I really want to direct this thing. And it was, and I have this dream of running with deers. Like, I'm a blind man and I'm running with deers, and I want to direct myself doing that. And I was like, wow, that sounds like a great image. Sure, I can help you. I used to do music videos with my brother, who's a great director, Leopoldo Goût. And he's the guy who kind of plugged me into the film world. He's a real filmmaker, and he so I was like, yeah, I can do that. I can help you. And I started to produce it for him. And I said, Idris, we can't have a herd of deer. You can't train deer. You can have one, and then we can cheat the shoot and kind of imagine you next to it. But it's like, we can't have more than one. It's impossible. I have to call PETA. You don't have the money. It's very little money. And so we kind of cheated on that. And the second the animal wranglers and PETA and the whole British kind of animal humane society came down to the shoot, they brought this deer who was terrified. It was looking at me straight to the eyes, and he was like, "Free me or I die, free me or I die, free me or I die." And I could feel he telling me that. And after that, I started drawing him, and I was like, "Dude, I promise you I won't eat you." And I don't know, that it's not really a deer that I make. It's a symbol for the feeling of, it was at a time where I really wanted to to put more time in the studio and paint more and make more art. And I felt like if I'm not free, I'm going to die. And I feel it's a symbol for all artists who we all need to find our freedom, or we die. And that stag kind of deer became kind of that feeling, that reminder, that ominous reminder of either you free or you die. And I can't get enough of it. It comes back again and again in the work. But anyway.
I love that story. I mean, and that really clarifies so much of that drawing, which is then this really beautiful collision of something trying to break in and something trying to break out, and the beauty of that trying to free me or also let me in, that like both of these animals are dealing with. I think this is like where it'd be a good time to ask you something I've always wanted to know. I feel like a lot of artists currently, or a lot of artists oftentimes, gravitate towards ambivalent images, or images that they have less of such a close proximity to, and you really gravitate towards incredibly loaded and powerful images, very symbolic realms, like like the only artist I can think of that does something similar is Kiki Smith. That like you're interested in the stag, you're interested in the elephant, you're interested in this thing. How do you personally as an artist handle such like operatic or pathos laden imagery?
Well, I always say that I'm a reactive artist. I react to the things that happen around me. I react to ideas. Like the book of Monarca was butterflies landing on my daughter's head and kind of reacting and studying it. And like, most of the stuff that I make is in reaction to some personal journey, a memory, or some accident that happens while I'm making things. And I love that kind of reaction to things that happen. Another artist that really influenced me was Joseph Beuys. He's a pilot in the Second World War. I used to be very suspicious of him because he was like a Nazi pilot in my head. And then a friend of mine, my roommate, this wonderful sculptor called Thomas Hausego, kind of reintroduced me to Joseph Beuys when I was studying art, and showed me like that he almost died frozen in this Russian farmers, or I don't know, I don't remember exactly where. Some farmers covered him in honey and grease, animal fat and felt, to thaw the frozen of his skin, and that those materials he kept using them again and again and again in his work as kind of like an exorcism to his experience. And I guess that was very influential to me, of finding things that really haunt you, and then repeating them until you're done. I guess it's the same when people like find a song that you really love and you play it again and repeat until you can't stand it any longer. And to me, it's like that. It's like I find images that come about to me, and then I can't get enough of them. The piece that you're seeing right now, it was I was doing this cats in my studio, because I don't know if you guys have seen two cats mating, but it's terrifying the way they scream and the way they fight when they're mating. And I started to draw that, and this started as a painting, and then it became a tapestry. But it was a real, I was very. It was pretty scary to hear at night two cats trying to mate, and then at the same time, I don't know why, in my random, I always say that during COVID, I also finished YouTube. I watched the entire YouTube. And one of the videos that I watched on YouTube, it was about trying to explain to a layman the Schrodinger's cat, in physics. And I love the idea of it, because it's kind of like when you're an artist, is there a cat inside of the box or not? If you see it, will it affect the cat? So all of these ideas are echoing, like jumping in the grooves of the needle, and I keep hearing them. So art in a way is a frequency, and it's our job to synchronize it. And I guess that my synchronizing to those sounds keep bouncing again and again on certain frequencies that I crave, and I love to play them. Did that answer the
Yeah.
question? I hope I'm not
Yeah,
too
it does. No,
cookie.
it totally. No, it totally does. What it actually was my suspicion, which is, again, like, when you're telling the story of Idris Elba, like, when him describing that story, I would have been like, oh my God, how do you do a person running with deer and pull that off? And it's not comedic. It's the passion that needs to be there. And I really think that like, you take on such symbolic kind of Jungian archetypical images and self-myth and surrealist images, but I think it's that use of repetition, like you said, that really allows you to grapple with it and to shake something loose from it. And I really love this ability to, like, shake loose this new form from these cats. Like, I love this image or this symbol that you did, and I think that, like, for me, there's something really valuable to learn, that when you deal with, the symbolic order of images, there's something about the act of repetition that makes it more legible or makes it understandable, as like why it makes it less symbolic and more personal, maybe, after the end of all of it.
Yeah, and I I've my both my brother and I, which we collaborated on some films. We're very obsessive with cave art.
Mm-hmm.
I consider some of the things I've seen are as contemporary as any art of today. I mean, there's a
Yeah,
extraordinary stuff that I've seen, um, and how they repeated ideas. There's some extraordinary things of modernity, like and of contemporary art. Like there's, you ask me of any artist practicing today, the most conceptual artist and the most physical artist, and I can show you a drawing of a cave art or a cave symbol or a painting or a drawing, 25,000 years ago, that they already said, that they already
yeah,
talked about it, they already. And remember, some of this art, like in the same cave, the distance between two artists is more than between us and the construction of the Giza pyramids, but by 20 times over. So it's the oceans of times that those masters existed is extraordinary beyond our comprehension. And there's not enough that I can say that it's really relevant and really vivid and really full of ideas. Like, I love that in that documentary of I think the Herzog one, that there's a stalagmite that
mm-hmm.
it's on one side of the stalagmite, it's a carved penis, and as
Yeah,
you walk around it, it becomes a vagina. And it's like
mm-hmm.
like whoever did that, it's like really trippy stuff.
Yeah,
Beautiful, vibrant ideas. They were conceptual, they were cool, they were intellectual, they were abstract. It's extraordinary what I've seen there. So I feel like really recharged every time that I go in through it. And it's something that still informs me every day when I get, when I want to get recharged. I just open one of the books or go into a documentary, or we've traveled to a few of them over the years. But it's amazing that to feel that you're part of that legacy, you're part of that tradition that started 30,000 years ago or older,
yeah,
and you're still part of that pulsating tradition of being a radio synchronizing to some energy that is out there. And I love whoever did those paintings and those sculptures. Thank you. 30,000 years after, thank you. We
yeah.
believe in you. We still believe in you.
And if I remember correctly, that's like the part of that documentary where it said, like, the stalactite proves that, like, one was done 50,000 years ago, another one was done 20,000 years ago, and it's all 30,000 years ahead of us. So, like, the space between the two drawings is longer than our space between them now, which is unbelievable.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. That's
Massive
exactly.
skills of time.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, Leopoldo, I want to leave room for questions from the audience. I just want to say, you're one of the best drawers I've ever had the chance to talk to. I love your sense of line. Like this, I'm glad we're up on this tapestry right now of something that I, for all of you, I hope you get a chance to see the work in person. The line never repeats itself. It wavers. It feels like a sound rhythm. It is like thick and heavy at other times. It's light. It dances. It is an incredibly present line that I think comes through from just a lifetime of this feeling of like deeply vibrant modes, deeply sad modes, like loss, love, all of it is carried in this line. So I just want to say while I can, one of the best drawers I've ever gotten to speak to, and I can't wait to see what you do next. But at this point, I want to open up to everyone in the audience, so they might have some questions for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. I think you're too generous. I don't believe that, but there's so many.
No,
There's so many other artists that I love more than I love myself. But thank you for saying that.
Yeah, it's phenomenal work. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for such a lovely conversation. And to the audience, the form in the chat is still open if y'all want to submit some questions. The first question I have is from myself. I was very curious about the record player and the speakers. Did you build those yourself as well?
Well, absolutely, it's a sculpture, and I had the loudspeakers. I had the help of my famous friend Alejandro Alcocer, who has Jano Analog. It's his company, and he makes high-end stereo sculptures, and we've collaborated on a couple of them. So I'm very not technical. I can't, he had to fly from Paris to install the cables. We had in the gallery as we were building it, the beautiful gallery brought two kind of DJs, and they were, oh yeah, we can sort this out, and no one could sort it out. Only Alejandro was able to kind of like fine tune the stereo that the components of the stereo. But I built a sculpture. I love sculpture. It was built in hydrocal, which is a stronger version of plaster and sand that I mixed with the raw pigments that we made in Oaxaca, the same pigments of the tapestries. I initially wanted to do a marble. I love carving, and I wanted to build them, but it was too slow. I was going really slow, and then to make a marble in New York was taking me too long. So I dumped that idea and started to work on plaster. It's still like very heavy. It's a solid sculpture. It's a very strong material, the hydrocal, with a mixture of an armature and then just chiseling it by hand. I had this image of the parts of the elephant kind of transforming itself like the feet. I'm obsessed with feet and the elephant's foot. In my head I had a foot that became a trunk, and that the sound kind of was in a loop, and the loudspeakers coming from the trunk of the elephant. And then when I was working, I was trying to make it, but I hadn't done a plaster sculpture in a long time, so it was falling apart. And I love that. All of my work is about to fail all the time. Like it's 5 seconds. If I don't have a project that it's like collapsing and breaking apart and being the worst piece of art you've ever seen, I don't feel I created anything. It has to be on the verge of total ridicule and terror, and that's when I feel I can get somewhere. It's just my own process. I mean, everybody's different. I admire so many other artists, like intellectually. For example, when I've seen paintings from one of the viewers here, Bruce Pearson, the wonderful painter, he's also instinctual, but there's a form, there's a discipline of his madness that I envy. My work is always like flipping and collapsing as I'm building it.
Yeah, I really appreciated the video to kind of get a more well-rounded look at the structure and the sculpture. Because at first I was not sure what I was looking at in the image, but the video really allowed me to appreciate the attention to detail that went into that. Okay, we have a question from GE, which I will be asking, and GE wants to know, What are the influences on your work? I'm seeing games like Kojima's Death Stranding and the Antlered God of Nature, Sir Nunos, and even Friz Freeling's Aardvark. Uh, if and GE's wondering if there's anything to these influences.
I have my own set of influence, like as I said, cave art, big influence. But also, like, for example, the animator, the Japanese animator, Murakami, the what's the name of, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Coco and all of those great Japanese animation films, books. I'm very influenced, by certain things in literature. Joseph Beuys, Kiki Smith, Louis Bourgeois. I love those artists. I like the scale and kind of the politics of Mexican muralism, but through the perspective of like some of their line drawing. Like, I don't know if anybody has seen the pencil drawings of Diego Rivera. They're like golden, like they silvery, beautiful things. So many things. I mean, like, we live in a world that is so easy to look at things and experience. There's museums full of art all the time, galleries, books everywhere, the interwebs. There's so much going on that I get influenced by a lot of things, and then I let those cosmologies mingle, and slowly they kind of manifest themselves out. They come out in different forms.
Thank you so much for that answer, Leopoldo, and thank you for the question, GE. Our last question today will be from Fong.
Oh, nice. Fancy.
Thank you. Hey, Leo.
Hello. Thank you,
Thank
Fong.
you. I've been listening the whole conversation while I was fixing a portrait, but yeah, it's so interesting to hear you both talking about your practice, because Andrew is definitely not that unlike you. He's an artist, very serious artist. He writes wonderfully, becoming one of the rare great writer, and he's one of our editor-at-large. And he runs a very amazing gallery below Grant with endless other artists who's part of the collective. And he teaches 3 different graduate classes. I don't know how he does it. So he does a lot of different things. So what I was in Princeton not long ago and looking at the commissioned piece by our beloved late friend Richard Serra, who just passed away recently. We just sent out a huge monumental tribute to Richard. And in my first interview with him, I asked him whether you were hedgehog or the fox, because that's exactly the title, the commissioned piece for Princeton University is The Hedgehog and the Fox. That was a very famous essay written by Isaiah Berlin, the great British philosopher, Sir Isaiah Berlin. And it really talked about the single-mindedness of a certain personality, artistic or philosophical temperament, who might be looking at the world in a variety of ways, but it has to filter through one lens. Whereas the fox, to whom the world cannot be boiled down to one point of view. So I guess you can apply that in the art context. Would be Bob Ryman would be the classic hedgehog, or Ernest Martin. They could only do one thing. You mentioned boys, Louis Bourgeois are the classic foxes. But it's interesting thing is that it's meant to be an intellectual game, but people in the Academy took it seriously when it was published in 1955, but it then got published again in 1978 or 7 in his classic volumes called Russian Thinkers. And that's when all the graduate and PhD program adopted that kind of vision between the two. But what is so interesting is that many of us who might be the classic foxes, like you and I and Andrew. I definitely becoming that for sure. But it wasn't for Bob Ryman in 2006. It was maybe September issue. I managed to interview both of them in one issue. Bob Ryman and Brian O'Doherty, would you believe it? The classic fox, you ever seen one? Who have 5 personalities, 10 names, you know, doctor, TV personality, a novelist, an art critic, and an artist under the name Patrick Ireland. Bob Ryman was one. So I have to choose. And I'm going to be Bob Ryman or I'm going to be Brian O'Doherty, a fox or a hedgehog. I was so confused. But I realized a lot of foxes tend to envy hedgehog, as you mentioned. But I learned also how to be super disciplined in our own way. You know, I get up in the morning, I have incremental hour, which I follow. That's how I get what I do, because I do one thing at a time. So I wonder what your schedule like. I mean, you do so many things, Leo. You know? I mean, come on, writing, in film,
it's jazz, it's pure jazz. It's pure jazz. It's looking for freedom, and I love what I do. There's nothing I want more than to be in the studio working, and it's not work. It's, to me, it's like I'm in the toilet and I'm doing it. I have an office in the bathroom with a little desk, and you know, like I that's all I do, and I love it. It's not work. It's like I found my passion, and it's like I love being here. I love having this conversation. It's like I feel part of a community, part of a tradition. Like I feel lucky. Like I told my son, you know, he asked me like, how are we doing? Like and I said, like, we live, we exist, we eat, we travel thanks to my imagination. That's a privilege. So, you know, my only fear is if the luck will run out and I'll be kicked out of back to Mexico. Like that's my only fear, is if my luck would run out. Right now I have a beautiful, beautiful family. I have you know, I'm not saying it's easy for me, but the actual production of the work, that's the easiest part. Like when, you know, I wake up in the morning, I come here and I can't wait to work. And, you know, the painting, the art forms is the easiest part. The writing is much harder. I'm dyslexic. I have a lot of problems. You know, Luca, you can't laugh about it, but I have a lot of issues with learning. You know, I have to trick myself to focus when I'm reading. So I found different things. I put different sound waves to focus. Like it's painful for me to do things that are not drawing, painting, sculpting, but I have to do them because they're part of the things that I'm doing. Part of I'm already way too in for not doing them. And all of the different things that I've done have been things that have come to me that I kind of go, okay, I can do that. I've never tried hard to search for something. It's been really a reactive experience, reacting to life and saying yes to things. I have an aversion to saying no. You know, I have a fear of saying no. But it's a privilege, and it's a drum roll that I can't wait to do. But you're the same. I go to your house and there's like paintings and drawings and ideas, and there's different rooms in your house, Fong, where there's different things that are going on in installations. Your whole house is like a big sculpture, a journey into art. I think that they should get Rachel Whiteread to do a cast of your house and put it in different countries. Because it's like you have the same thing. I mean, it's like we live a very...
No, I'm very uptight. Look at my calendar. See, every day you have to cross out and everything. All handwritten.
That's amazing.
But anyway, Leo, listen, it's amazing. Congratulations on the show. I hope I can be able to fly there and see it.
Oh, we're taking you. We've talked that if you don't book the time, we have a Mexican crew that is going to kidnap you, and and take you to the show. So it's happening.
Okay.
It's
Well, let's
happening.
talk. Maybe my team will allow me to go too.
It's happening.
Magley is minding away already. Listen, Toni Morrison once said something very profound. She say, if you surrender to the wind, you ride with it. And I think that's what you're doing. So thank you. I love it. One of the best thing is really meeting you this year, becoming friends, and a lot of things we can collaborate and work together. And yeah, thank you, Andrew. Back to you, Magley.
Thank you. Thank you for Bruce, who introduced us, who's there.
Oh, yeah, Bruce did too. That's right. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you so much for that question, Fong. And thank you, Leopoldo and Andrew. Thank you, Kaylin from Provost Gallery, for your support in preparing for today's event. We'd also like to thank the Terra Foundation for American Art for sponsoring our NSE program and making these daily conversations possible, and for their support of our growing archive, which you can view on the Rail's YouTube channel. The Rail has been free and independent for 24 years. A donation directly supports our writers, staff, and operations. Support our work through the link in the chat, and join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for a conversation with Brooke Kamen-Rappaport and Lily Way on the 20th anniversary of public art in Madison Square Park. And you can now turn on your microphones and say goodbye and hello as you leave. Thank you all so much.
Mwah. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Genius.
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Show. Great seeing you all.
Thank you so
for
much.
tuning in.
Listen. Congratulations, Leopoldo.
Mwah. Love you guys.
Congratulations.
Go see the show,
Have a good
everybody.
afternoon,
Thank you.
everyone.
Andrew. Thank you, Leopoldo.
Thank you.